So, we have Mystery Winner here. Mystery Winner is a 1 mana 1/1 at common. She has Battlecry, Discover a Secret. So, a 1 mana Discover a Secret was already a spell in Hunter during the previous rotation. It was called Secret Plan, and it did see play as Spell Hunter was a big thing at the time and they were running secrets. This is obviously infinitely better than that, as it comes with a 1/1 body, and there is pretty much no bad Hunter secrets that you... Like, this is guaranteed to give you at least a playable card. The worst secrets in Hunter are things like Misdirection, and... I guess just Misdirection and maybe Snipe. You're pretty much always guaranteed to get a secret that's really good, and this also benefits from the fact that it's a secret that isn't in your deck. So... You know, your opponent might be trying to play around like a pack tactics or a freezing trap, and it's a pressure plate instead, which they can't really play around because they weren't expecting it because it was discovered. So Mystery Winner, I think, is a card that will see play in what I think will be the best Hunter deck going forward, which is Secret Hunter. In fact, I think secrets in Hunter are going to be so good that Highlander Hunter moves away from their current build and runs more of these secret synergy cards because they are so good. Since it's a discover effect, you're getting 3 options. It's impossible for all 3 options to be bad cards. Dancing Cobra. It's a 2 mana 1/5 beast at common with corrupt to gain poisonous. Hunter does not want this. It's awkward to corrupt, and they don't want a 1/5 with poison. Like, there are better beasts in Hunter that you can use, and this one just doesn't really help your game plan in any meaningful way. That's all there really is to say about it, unfortunately. Next up is Open the Cages. It's a 2 mana common secret. When your turn starts, if you control 2 minions, you summon an animal companion. This secret is really good considering the synergy and the sort of internal mechanics that work alongside this. So an important thing to note is that if you're running a secret hunter, you want to run a lot of secrets. And if you're running a lot of secrets, you are presumably running Snake Trap, you're potentially running Pack Tactics, and both of those secrets help you trigger this one. So those two secrets will trigger first, then on your turn you can potentially get an Open the Cages, which is really nice. This also has great synergy with the Petting Zoo card that is also in this set for Secret Hunter, which I think is actually the best Hunter card in the set. Open the Cages is just a decent secret, and I think is one that you'll play in pretty much every Secret Hunter deck because an Animal Companion for 2 mana is really, really good. And it's easy to proc this with your other secrets. It's also a secret that won't guaranteed to be active on turn 2. So if you play like something on like it's a 1 mana 1/3 on turn 1, then you Open the Cages on turn 2, there's a chance that this secret won't trigger by turn 3 to give you a 6/6 for 3 mana with Petting Zoo, which is insane. Next up is Trampling Rhino. It's a 5 mana rare minion. It's a beast. It's a 5/5. It has Rush. After it attacks and kills a minion, excess damage hits the enemy hero. Knuckles didn't see play, and this is very similar to Knuckles. It has a better aggressive stat line. It also has Rush, so it can attack immediately. It does have to kill the minion to deal the excess damage, but it is dealing the excess, so that just makes sense. This is also a 5-cost beast, which is relevant because Guardian Animal still exists, but this is not good enough to run off Guardian Animals, especially since this has Rush already, so it doesn't even get the benefit of being summoned with Rush from Guardian Animals. I don't know where you run this card necessarily. I don't think it fits into Highlander Hunter. I don't think Beast Hunter is going to work with Shando, even though there are more beasts. I think that you're going to be playing Highlander Hunter or Secret Hunter, and this doesn't really fit into either of those archetypes. Maybe it just goes into Highlander Hunter as just another minion that you can run in that deck, but I feel like there is a handful of cards that are just going to be better than a 5 mana 5/5 with Rush with a slight amount of upside. Jewel of Nzoth is an 8 mana epic spell. Summon 3 friendly Death Rattle minions that died this game. So this is a great effect. Let me just say that. In a vacuum, this is a really powerful card. You can build your deck around this decently well. but this sort of really suffers from the fact that Hunter just doesn't usually run expensive cards because they can't. Sure, they run Dynatamor Brand, but Dynatamor Brand can be tutored with Polk Out right now, and it is a King Crush for 7 mana, which is really good. In Constructed, I don't see this being used even in heavy Death Rattle Synergy decks with like Maximus Blast and Heimer. I actually think that's just a meme. Again, it doesn't fit into what I think will be Highlander Hunter or Secret Hunter, and that sort of makes it really difficult to use. nzoth is really, does have some Hunter support, I'll admit, but you obviously are running Maxima in that deck because you don't want to be summoning your nzoth with Maxima. I am getting a comment from the Twitch chat that says this is going to be a really good card for the duels, or it might be really good in the duels format, which I agree, because duels does have a lot of like Death Rattle synergy from their treasures. But I have no real experience with duels, I haven't played it, and I'm not super interested in the duels format. But maybe this is like where this card is supposed to be played in, is in the duels format. Next up is Rinlings Rifle. That's a 4-mana 2/2 legendary weapon. After your hero attacks, discover a secret and cast it. It has been confirmed by the devs that the secret you discover and cast isn't one that is already equipped, which helps this quite a lot. I think that while this isn't the flashiest legendary ever made, it's just like a decent value card. And since I think that Secret Hunter will be good, and Highlander Hunter will use secrets, Rinlings Rifle will probably see play in both Secret and Highlander Hunter as just a way to generate more secrets, especially since you're basically getting you're getting a free weapon out of this mana-wise, essentially. Next up is Don't Feed the Animals. It's a 2-mana epic spell. Give all beasts in your hand +1/+1. Corrupt, give them +2/+2 instead. I'm not going to waste any time really discussing this card in great detail. I'm just going to put it this way. This card sucks. Hand buff, historically, has only been good when it is cheap and efficient and, you know, painless to use, for lack of a better word. And this doesn't really fit with any of that. It isn't necessarily cheap because you want to corrupt it first, because you want the most you can get out of your hand buff, which means you need to play a 3-mana spell first. It's not efficient because you have to pay 2 mana for this in Hunter, and Hunter also does not typically draw or hoard their cards very long. So, you know, you're not going to be getting a massive amount of buffs for this for the amount of mana you invested, which makes it really clunky. And it's also limited to just beasts, which really hurts the card a lot. Again, as I stated, like, hand buff cards have only seen play when they aren't limited, and they just buff every minion in your hand, which this doesn't do. In a format where you could have potentially Masters Call in an all-beast deck, this would be really good, but it just goes against so much of the Hunter philosophy in my mind that it hurts too much to run a card. Like, Don't Feed the Animals is just too hard to run. Next up is Petting Zoo. It's a 3-mana rare spell. Summon a 3/3 Strider, and you repeat for each secret you control. So what's great about this card is that even in a worst case, it's a 3-mana 3/3, which isn't terrible. That is strictly better than Hyena Alpha. But this obviously scales insanely well. And I guess, like, I've discussed this card at length when it was first revealed. And people sort of, I think, underrated this card quite a lot. I've always been really high on this card. I think this card is insane. It's actually probably not awful to go coin Secret on turn 1, Secret on turn 2, to get 9/9 worth of stats for 3 mana on turn 3. Like, that is, like, almost backbreaking. And I can't think of a single deck that could deal with that on turn 3, especially if they're going first. Except maybe Warlocks running Hellfire, but Warlocks have not run Hellfire for a long time. That's, like, nuts, and I don't think... Oh, and Flame Ward. That's a good point, too. That being said, it doesn't need to be that to be insane. I think this card will just be good as a 6/6 on turn 3, which it will be quite commonly because of the new secret that I forget the name of already, Open the Cages, right? Like, Open the cages on 2 is pretty much impossible to trigger on turn 2 or turn 3, going into turn 3, unless you already have like a tour guide and a phase stalker on the board and you hit the hero power button and they didn't trade. But even then, like, this card is insane. I actually do think that a common line in Secret Hunter will be tour guide into phase stalker and then hero power petting zoo on turn 3. That'll give you a 2/3, a 1/1, and 2 6/6s on turn 3, which might just be tempo that is not able to be kept up with, which is insane. You could also just go 1/1 secret, discover a secret guy, secret petting zoo, and that's also really good. This also is decent in the late game as well, because you can just play like secret petting zoo. You know what I mean? Like this is flexible and scales enough through the game that I think that it'll just be a good card, full stop. And this card I think is what pushes Secret Hunter into the #1 Hunter deck going forward, which is kind of frustrating to me, to be honest, because I wanted Hunter to not really be an aggro class for one fucking expansion. But it looks like they're going to be pushing more of an aggressive style Hunter with secrets, which I guess is way better than Face Hunter, but still. Next is Darkmoon Tonk. It's a 7 mana mech. It's an 8/5 at rear. Death Rattle. Fire 4 missiles at random enemies that deal 2 damage each. Finally, Oblivitron is getting some support in the standard format, which is where I think this card will see most of its play in like Oblivitron style mech decks. With Maximus Blast is a mech, so it could be used alongside your nzoth, and it's not a bad mech to resurrect from nzoth because it's a decent stat line with a scary death rattle. It's also really, really good with Maximus Blast because Maxima will summon this minion from your deck, it'll deal 8 damage to face, and then die and split 8 damage randomly, which is really good. Do I think that will be the dream for Hunter this expansion? No, I don't think so. I think that secrets are going to be better overall. And that this Maxima thing is kind of a meme. Again, high cost Hunter cards typically do not see that much play because Hunter does not have the tools to support a late game plan. They do have the tools to support efficient murder. Is Mech Hunter a thing? Was confused by this one. Mech Hunter has some tools in standard, but it was a lot bigger in the previous expansion, like in the previous year rotation. They do have some mech support, and this expansion in particular has released a ton of new mechs, potentially to support Death Rattle Mech Hunter. But do I think it will be competitive? No, not even a little bit. And then finally we have Maximus Blast, which is a 6 mana 4/4 legendary minion. Battlecry, summon a minion from your deck and attacks the enemy hero, it then dies. So again, pairs really well with Darkmoon Tonk. Pairs really well with Colossus of the Moon and any great sort of Death Rattle minions. Are there a lot of great Death Rattle minions printed in this set? Kind of. There are some that are decent to summon off of this. I think Darkmoon Tonk is the best in Hunter. And there are a couple of good ones from previous expansions. Again, there are just like Safeguard is decent with this as well, right? Oblivitron is decent with this too. With 9 lives and stuff, right? Again, it just fits into that sort of weird mech Death Rattle package. But I don't think that will be the most competitive variant of Hunter going forward. I don't think it will be good enough to push that sort of a Hunter deck. Maxima is interesting, and I really like recruit style Hunter cards. Like Cthun Winter Wisp was one of my favorite Hunter cards ever printed. But this is not anywhere near the elegance of Cthun Winter Wisp in my opinion. And simply does not support the Hunter game plan of just killing your opponent. As for Hunter, I think that it'll be easy to say that Secret Hunter is going to be pushed well above to the point of absurdity. I think Secret Hunter is going to be powerful enough that it is perhaps the premier aggressive deck in the format. It sort of depends on what Demon Hunter sort of does with their acrobatics and their bladed ladies. But there's a lot of efficient cards here in Hunter to push that sort of secret archetype. And I don't think the big Death Rattle mech thing is going to work at this expansion at this time, barring some insane nerfs to aggressive Hunter cards. Mage gets a couple of major themes in this expansion. Each one I think is great, but I think that there's one that pushes out all the rest. We'll start with the Confection Cyclone. It's a 2-mana 3/2 elemental at common, with a battle cry that add 2 1/2 sugar elementals to your hand. So Firefly is a card that was played in a lot of decks. Was actually really good in elemental lists, even if elemental lists weren't super crazy. It saw a lot of play in Quest Rogue. Firefly saw a lot of play over its lifespan. Confection Cyclone is a strictly better Firefly, and compares even better to Igneous Elemental from Ungoro. You're paying 1 mana less for the same amount of stats, with the same effect, except this one is a battle cry, not a death rattle. This does heavily support an elemental mage deck. As we know, like having small elemental resources you can use for your elemental plays are really good. And this card in a vacuum is really good, but I don't think that elemental mage will get there this expansion, and I think that mage is pushed into a different direction with the other cards they got in this expansion. And this potentially is one of them. It's Game Master. It's a 2-mana common minion. It's a 2/3. The first secret you play each turn costs 1. So Mage is getting a heavy secret package this expansion, and a lot of the secret cards are really powerful. However, this isn't one of them. It's a Kirin Tor Mage style effect. However, I think that you probably don't need a redundancy of Kirin Tor Mage effects, and I think just the 2 Kirin Tor Mages and maybe the Arcane Mysteries you run in your deck will be enough, and you don't need to run a Game Master. You're probably playing this on turn 3, so you can guarantee the 1 mana secret off of it, and in that case, why not just play the Kirin Tor Mage that turn anyway, because you get a 4/3 in the free secret instead. Not much else to really say about this one. Firework Elemental. It's a 5-mana common minion. Battle cry, deal 3 damage to a minion. Corrupt, deal 12 instead. It's a 3/5 elemental. This is kind of cool with like Frostledge Jaina in Wild, because the Corrupt battle cry will heal you for 12, which is really huge. In terms of standard, I don't think a 5-mana 3/5 that assassinates a minion is that good. Especially since you have to corrupt this, and any corrupt card at 5-6 mana is probably too difficult to corrupt in your average deck with the way that the curve is going to work. And I think because of that, Firework Elemental doesn't get there in this Elemental Mage deck, even if it is the premier Mage deck. I don't know if Firework Elemental will see play. It might, because it might just be good removal. If there's one thing that Mage sort of suffers from right now, it's big health pools. Since Mage removal is always damage based, and dealing 12 damage to a minion will be able to kill pretty much all minions, and it even kills evasive minions. Not that that will matter too much, unless Embiggen Druid is a huge threat. This might see played Highlander Mage, because Highlander Mage has a lot of heavy curve, like top end curves to make this deal 12 damage consistently. But then it competes with things like Rolling Fireball. And again, there's already a lot of 5-mana cards in Highlander Mage. So I don't know if Firework Elemental will work in that deck. Next up is Mask of Cthun. It's a 7-mana rare spell that deals 10 damage, randomly split among all enemies. This card is probably one of the weakest in the set. It's kind of trash. I don't know what the flavor is trying to tell you for this card. I think sometimes off of Discover effects it'll be backbreaking, but I mean, think about it this way. There was a card called Combustion. It was 3 mana, and it dealt 5 damage randomly split among all enemies. This is 4 mana more for double the missiles, which doesn't seem that good. It is a 7 mana Pyro if no minions are on board, which is true, but how often are you going to be up against a deck with 0 minions on board on turn 7, especially when you're a mage, and dealing with boards can be quite awkward for you sometimes. I think Mask of Cthun is one of the weakest cards in the set. Next up is Grand Finale. It's an 8 mana rare spell. Summon an 8/8 elemental. Repeat for each elemental you played last turn. This certainly is an explosive effect, forgive the pun, but this card suffers a little bit from sort of a game sense sort of thing, and it's a little clunky to use. So to get the maximum value out of this effect, I think you need to play 3 elementals. Any more than 3 elementals makes this kind of awkward because you're potentially not getting all of the elementals you summon, right? So if you summon 4 elementals in a previous turn, you can only get 3 8/8 elementals if your opponent doesn't clear the small elementals and you can't trade those elementals in. So if you're not understanding how this is awkward, basically it telegraphs to your opponent that this thing is coming, so they are less likely to use removal on the elementals you played the previous turn. The elementals you played the previous turn are likely going to be small elementals because you want to be able to use your mana cheaply to get as many Grand Finale minions as they can. But again, your opponent is less likely to remove them because they know that a bunch of 8/8s are coming out from the Grand Finale. Another thing too is that if you're playing a bunch of small elementals, your opponent also might not have minions on the board, in which case you can't trade your smaller elementals into their minions to get the maximum effect of your 8/8s, especially since they are less likely to burn removal against your small elementals, knowing the 8/8s are coming. There's just a lot of clunkiness to this card. However, there are going to be situations where summoning a bunch of 8/8 elementals off of Grand Finale is so good that you just win the game off of it. I mean, think about Sociologist Militia, for example, where sometimes you drop your Sociologist Militia with a bunch of soul fragments left in your deck, and some decks just can't deal with it if they don't have the right answers. So while it is an awkward and clunky card to use, it's a card that sometimes will just devastate and take over games. Again, I think it'll be used in those Elemental Mage decks, but I don't think those Elemental Mages will be anything better than Tier 3, and that's putting it generously. I don't think you can even run Grand Finale in Highlander Mage, because you're just not going to run that many Elementals, I think, in Highlander Mage. Next up is Deck of Lunacy. This is a 2-mana legendary spell. Transform spells in your deck into ones that cost 3 more and they keep their original cost. It has been confirmed that this is not just mage spells, so it'll be spells from any class. While this thing is a complete fucking clown fiesta, it's also legitimately decent in Highlander Mage. When you get to there's going to be a point in the game where eventually you just don't want the cheap spells in your deck, and you're probably okay with just getting a bunch of random spells that are 3 more on average, right? So this is actually going to be okay in some lists. This is also 2 mana, so it can be discovered off of Magic Trick, for example. And that's really fun to think about as well. So yeah, I think Deck of Lunacy does have a home, but where I think we will use it the most is in random Casino Mage, which is obviously not competitive. I don't know if Deck of Lunacy is a competitive card, but sometimes it's going to be summoned randomly off of like Yogs and Yog boxes, or you're going to pick it off of some spells, and that's going to be a clown fiesta of a game. This also does weaken Evocation a little bit as well, because you probably don't want to be playing this in decks that would use Evocation normally. But an interesting card all the same. Next up is Sage, Seer of Darkmoon. She's a 6-mana 5/5 legendary minion with a battle card to draw 1 card, which is upgraded for each friendly secret that just triggered this game. It's probably not going to be hard to have 4 secrets trigger by the time you draw and play Sage, Seer of Darkmoon on turn 5, and a 6-mana 5/5 that draws you 4 cards is pretty good. In Wild, this is even crazier, because Wild has a lot more secrets, and you could potentially play a lot more and have more secrets activated by that time. In fact, this card is so good that I'm wondering if it potentially replaces Aluneth in Wild Secret Mage, because it has the strict benefit of being a potentially bigger temporary reload instead of Aluneth's slower incremental reload. And this also doesn't have the downside that Aluneth has, where it will potentially just kill you. But this is obviously a huge push towards Secret Mage in Standard, and I think Secret Mage is going to be a great Standard deck. And if Secret Mage is a great Standard deck, then Sage, Seer of Darkmoon is always going to see play in those decks. an insanely powerful draw engine for an aggressive secret decks. Next up is Occult Conjurer. It's a 4 mana 4/4. It's an epic. Battlecry, if you control a secret, summon a copy of this. Again, this just replaces the weakest card in current secret mages in Wild. And secret decks are going to be also pushed in Standard. This is a 4 mana 8/8, like most of the time. And there are going to be some secrets that just don't trigger. So you will be able to get this off as a 4 mana 8/8 sometimes. And I mean, even if you have to play like a secret alongside this, like a 7 mana 8/8 is still pretty good across 2 bodies. This in Wild is insane. Wild Secret Mage is actually kind of looking for cards like this. The only thing they have that's similar to this is Cabal Crystal Runner. So having another similar style of card to get off your duplicates and stuff is going to be awesome. Secret decks seem to be very flavor appropriate for the Darkmoon Faire. I agree, and I'm kind of for it. But I think that this sort of, like, my sort of highness on secret decks is going to fade very quickly when they take over the expansion. Keep in mind that Cloud Prince and Arcane Flak Mage are both standard cards, and the both of them are so great in Wild Secret Mage. In fact, the only differences between Standard and Wild Secret Mage that I can see going forward is that Duplicate, Ice Block, and Explosive Runes will be out of the Standard format. But Ice Barrier will stand in for Ice Block most of the time, and you can just run Fireball instead of Explosive Runes. In terms of Duplicate, it's kind of a shame that they won't have anything to replace Duplicate, but they do have Rigged Fair Game, which I think will be decent enough because you don't have Aladeth, right? I know that we're arguing that Sage Seer of Darkmoon is better potentially in some ways than Aladeth is, but Rigged Fair Game is a decent failsafe if you don't have your Sage Seer of Darkmoon yet. It's also potentially good secret to trip your opponent up if they're playing around Flame Ward or Counterspell. Rigged Fair Game will not trigger it until you don't take damage. So your opponent might be like, oh, I don't want to attack because what if it's Flame Ward? Then you draw 3 cards. Or they might be like, oh, I don't want to give them 3 cards if it's Rigged Fair Game. I better attack them and it's Flame Ward. You know, there's just a lot of really cool interactions between the Mage secrets in this expansion. And obviously, Secret Mage is going to be good. I think all of the secret cards, secret payoff cards you see in this set will see play together. Especially with the pre-existing secret synergy we have from previous sets. And finally, we have Ring Toss. This is a 4 mana rare spell. Discover a secret and cast it, and Corrupt is discover 2 secrets instead. I know I just said that all the secret cards from this expansion will see play in that hypothetical Secret Mage. I take it back, this one won't. This one is just too slow. I know that and discovering 2 secrets is good value, but it is strictly worse than Arcane Keysmith, which is a wild card, which is a 4 mana 2/2 that discovers a secret and casts it. That doesn't see play in Wild Secret Mage. I can't imagine this seeing play in Standard Secret Mage. Where I do think this will find a home is in Highlander Mage, because that is good value if you can corrupt it, which I think they will be able to. And it also will see play in Rhino Secret Mage in Wild, because they just want more effects like this. Mage getting a lot of good stuff this expansion overall. Again, you've got this really strong secret passage with Sage, Seer of Darkmoon, Occult Conjurer, and Rigged Fair Game alongside already existing secret synergy. You also have decent elemental support, like Confection Cyclone is a card that people would have killed for in the Ungoro, Knights of the Frozen Throne, Kobolds and Catacombs meta. And Grand Finale, while it is clunky, is going to be good enough in some matchups to just take control of games and end them. But there is, of course, some awkwardness in the Mage cards in Deck of Lunacy and Mask of Cthun.